out here in Calgary for as long as I've been in politics, and I've got to say, you've always done good, but this is the biggest, fullest room that I've seen you guys pull together. It's a big deal, but it's also something that's extremely important to me. Because, you know, I'm from downtown Montreal, and everyone's sort of liberal by default in Montreal. And, as we go across the country, and I see rooms of people who, who've had it easy being liberals all their lives. And when I come to Alberta, I know that you guys are liberals, not because it makes you popular, business, but because there's a deep conviction. You believe in what the Liberal Party stands for. And for me, coming out here is not just about, rah, 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 try and, do better next time. It's also very important for me to be reminded that the Liberal Party is a party that goes from coast to coast to coast. We are a country that stands up for all of Canada. And that, unfortunately, is very rare these days. We have now, in Ottawa, two parties, and you know what, there's always a challenge in liberal dinners like this. I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time talking about what a bad guy Stephen Harper is. You're here in this room, you have ideas about bad guys. I mean, he's local for you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, attacking. A little both. He's crazy like a fox, but anyway. The issue is, where are we? Where does the Liberal Party fit in? What is it that we have to propose? What is it that we need to do to succeed in a landscape, federally, that offers us some tremendous challenges? Everyone says, oh, the Liberal Party's being squeezed out of the middle, because both of the other main parties are pushing us and squishing into our territory. And people look around the world and see that in Western democracies right around the globe, parties at the center are struggling and disappearing. And parties of the strong left or the strong right are doing well. We have to ask ourselves why. And it's in large part because there is such a cynicism around politics these days that people have fallen into the easy habit, not voting for someone, but voting against something. People park themselves on the left and they vote against the reactionary capitalists of the right, or they park themselves on the right and they vote against those hippie socialists on the left. And nobody's talking about what we're voting for. You're picking the least worst of all the options, the one that doesn't turn your stomach too much. And there are places in the world, notably our neighbors to the south, where that polarization has gotten so entrenched that who gets to be president is decided by a thin sliver, about 10% of undecideds. And no matter how strong people are, it's always 55 to 45 as the biggest possible margin of victory. That's a very, very divided, polarized country. Canada is not a polarized country. But for too long, political parties that have succeeded, recently anyway, have succeeded because, first of all, they get very, very good at identifying strategically which groups are likely to vote for them. And they could care less about the people who might not vote for them. So there's no sense of reaching out to everyone and trying to please everyone, but there's a very strategic, tactical focus on just enough people you need to get by. That's what has gotten our Prime Minister, our current Prime Minister, his majority government. And what you end up with is not just people, micro-targeting and, looking at discouraging people from coming out to vote if they weren't going to vote against you. And that's what negative attack ads are all about. Not about getting you, when the attack ads came out against Michael Ignatieff, they weren't about trying to have you watch that and say, oh, that's it, I'm definitely voting for Stephen Harper. They were about getting the people who might have voted for that nice fellow, Mr. Ignatieff, to say, well, you know what, I thought he might be okay, but obviously he's not. I'm not going to vote for anyone. Or I'm going to spoil my ballot and vote for the Greens, or you know, do something that is not a positive choice. That's what vote suppression is all about. Now, the electoral fraud scandal we're looking at right now is even a step beyond that, where they called up people, identified them as non-conservative supporters, and then a few weeks later, on the day of the election, told them, oh yeah, your campaign voting is across town, not at the school beside your house. So these are all tactics that are used to divide. And there are also tactics that focus on having a very strong, very motivated ideological base that sits on the far end of the extreme, of the spectrum, the political spectrum, who are willing to give money and volunteer, and you end up having politics being the domain predominantly, not of ordinary hardworking people, but of people who have access to grind. People who have specific issues that motivate them to get involved in a particular polarized political party. And the NDP, receiving official opposition after the last election, having to pick a new leader, decided in their choice of leader that they were going to fight fire with fire. And they were going to pick someone who was very much like the current Prime Minister. Now, to my mind, the problem with fighting fire with fire is you have a pretty good chance of burning the house down. But they now have, and we as Canadians now have, a Prime Minister and a leader of the opposition who are both very smart, tactical, strategic politicians who are very dictatorial and top-down, who are very combative, very much flip sides of the same coin. And what's worse is that each of them have decided that they are grounding themselves in one part of the country and writing off the other part of the country. With Mr. Mulcair's comments against the oil sands over the past few weeks, we can very much see that he's playing a very similar game to the game that Gilles Duceppe was playing, the leader of the Bloc Québécois. You know, trying to please, you know, Eastern base, giving up on the West, and planning to win over Ontario to get his government. Very much like Stephen Harper is anchoring himself in his Western base, has given up on Quebec, and is planning on winning by playing to Ontario. And yes, it does make it look like, because we have two ideologically grounded parties who are moving towards the center, there might not be much place left in traditional politics along the spectrum for the Liberal Party of Canada. But for me, that's misunderstanding the incredible opportunity we have right now. Because people don't want to be polarized in this country. Canadians are better than that. We don't want a party that's going to pit one side of the country against another, one community against another. We know that we are one of those rare exceptions on the planet as a country that has been able to succeed and be strong, not in spite of our differences, but because of those differences. And the different backgrounds and stories and languages and religions and cultures and geographic regions and urban versus rural, north versus south, east versus west, all those variances across Canada is part of what has made us this extraordinary success of being, you know, probably the most successful country economically in the world these days.